Welcome back to Enigmatic Echoes, the place where history, folklore, and the internet occasionally gets together and decide facts are optional. Tonight's story has everything: a mysterious skeleton, a lost diary, a forgotten soldier, and a tree that apparently decided to become a coffin, which is honestly a level of commitment most apartment landlords don't even have. So dim the lights, lock the doors, and if you're listening in the woods, maybe don't lean against any hollow trees tonight. You'll never know who's already occupying the space. Let's begin. The legend begins in Ohio, specifically in Miami County. According to the story, sometime during the 19th century, a powerful storm tore through the region. Trees were uprooted, branches snapped, entire groves were damaged. After the storm passed, locals began inspecting the destruction, and that's when someone allegedly discovered something horrifying. One of the damaged trees had split open. Inside its hollow trunk was a human skeleton. Not beside the tree, not underneath it, inside it. Imagine that for a second. You're expecting squirrels, maybe a raccoon. Instead, human remains stare back at you from the darkness. That image alone is enough to make most people walk directly back home and pretend they never saw anything. But according to the legend, the discovery became even stranger, because next to the skeleton, there was supposedly a diary, and that diary told an incredible story. The diary allegedly belonged to a military officer named Captain Roger Vanderburg. According to the tale, Vanderburg had fought during the disastrous military campaign of Arthur St. Clair in 1791. For those unfamiliar, St. Clair's defeat remains one of the worst losses ever suffered by the United States military against Native American forces. More than 800 soldiers were killed or wounded during this battle. The battle occurred near what is now Fort Recovery, Ohio, in present-day Mercer County. The legend claims Vanderburg survived the battle, barely. Wounded and terrified, he fled into the wilderness. Alone, no food, no supplies, no help. The forest stretched endlessly around him. Days passed, his injuries worsened. Exhaustion set in, and eventually, he climbed into a hollow tree for shelter. At first, it was only supposed to be temporary. Protection from weather, protection from animals, a place to rest. But according to the diary, something went horribly wrong. One version says a storm struck while Vanderburg slept. The tree shifted, the opening became blocked. The hollow trunk effectively became a prison. Another version claims he was simply too weak to climb back out. His wounds had become severe. His strength was fading. Every attempt to escape failed. So he remained trapped. Day after day, alone, hungry, waiting, writing. The diary allegedly described his final thoughts. His fear, his regret, his realization that nobody was coming. Imagine the horror of understanding exactly how you're going to die. Not in battle, not dramatically, not heroically, just stuck inside a tree, slowly disappearing from the world. The story says Vanderburg continued writing until the very end. Then the diary stopped, and years later, his remains were supposedly discovered exactly where he died. Still inside the tree, still holding the record of his final days. If that's where the story ended, it wouldn't already be creepy enough. But there's a problem. A very big problem. Researchers eventually began looking into the story, and almost immediately, things started falling apart. The first issue? Nobody could find records of a Captain Roger Vanderburg connected to St. Clair's defeat. That's not a tiny detail. That's the entire foundation of the legend. If Vanderburg wasn't there, then who was the skeleton? If the diary existed, who wrote it? And that's when historians uncovered something even stranger. The story may never have happened at all, because evidence suggested the tale actually originated from a work of fiction published decades later. Not a military report, not a newspaper investigation, not a historical record, a novel, a piece of storytelling, and somehow, over time, the fictional story escaped into real-world folklore. People repeated it, retold it, changed details, added local landmarks, and eventually many listeners forgot it had started as fiction. The story became a legend, then a rumor, then for some people, a historical fact, which honestly might be the most terrifying thing in this episode. Because if you've spent 5 minutes on the internet lately, you already know that's exactly how things happen. Now here's where things get interesting, because Ohio has long had stories involving bodies discovered inside trees. Not necessarily Vanderburg, not necessarily diaries, just bodies. Throughout the 19th century, newspapers across America published bizarre stories involving skeletons found in hollow trees after storms or logging operations. Many of these stories followed similar patterns: a missing traveler, a fugitive, a hunter seeking shelter. Someone climbs inside a hollow trunk, something happens, and years later, their remains are discovered. The details changed, but the imagery remained the same. A tree became a tomb, a forest hiding secrets for decades. Some folklorists believe these stories spread because they're instantly believable. Trees live for centuries. They conceal things. They create shadows. And there's something deeply unsettling about the idea that a person could disappear so completely that nature simply grows around them. The skeleton in a tree may be Ohio's version of the larger folklore tradition, a local branch, a much older fear. Now here's the part where local storytelling takes over. While there are no verified paranormal encounters connected directly to Captain Vanderburg, people in parts of Ohio have continued sharing eerie experiences tied to the legend. Most are secondhand stories, the kind that travel through campfires, local gatherings, late-night conversations, stories that begin with, "my friend's uncle," which, scientifically speaking, is usually where reality packs its bags and leaves. One story claims a group of teenagers exploring wooded areas near Miami County, searching for the supposed location of the tree. As night fell, they heard knocking sounds coming from deeper in the forest. 3 slow knocks, then silence, then 3 more. They left. Another tale describes hikers finding a large hollow tree. One of them shined a flashlight inside. For a split second, he claimed he saw what looked like a human skull. When everyone else looked, nothing was there, just darkness and bark. Again, there's no evidence these encounters happened. They're local campfire stories, modern additions to an older legend. And that's how folklore survives. People keep feeding it, generation after generation, like tossing logs onto a fire. The reason this legend endures isn't because of evidence, it's because of imagery. Think about it. A battlefield survivor, a lost diary, a man trapped in a tree, a skeleton discovered decades later. Every part of it feels cinematic. You can see it, you can hear it, you can imagine the final moments. Even after historians pointed out the inconsistencies, people kept telling the story, because legends don't survive on facts alone. They survive on emotion, fear, mystery, curiosity, and the skeleton in a tree delivers all 3. Whether Vanderburg existed or not, the image remains unforgettable. A forest keeping a secret, a tree acting as a grave, a voice from the past supposedly speaking through a forgotten diary. That's the kind of story people remember. So, was there really a skeleton inside a tree in Miami County, Ohio? Maybe. Bodies have been discovered in stranger places. Was there truly a Captain Roger Vanderburg who survived St. Clair's defeat only to die trapped inside of a hollow trunk? The evidence says probably not. Did the legend grow from fiction into folklore? That appears to be the most likely explanation. But folklore has never cared much about likelihood. That's why those stories survive. Long after facts fade, long after names disappear, long after the trees themselves are gone. Because sometimes, people don't remember what's true, they remember what frightened them. And a skeleton hidden inside a tree is the kind of image that stays with you forever. And that, my friends, is the legend of the skeleton in a tree. Proof that if you ever need a place to hide, nature may take that request a little too seriously. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to follow, share, and leave a review for Enigmatic Echoes. And if you happen to find a diary inside a hollow tree, maybe let a historian read it first, because apparently Ohio folklore has a habit of turning novels into eyewitness accounts. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and maybe avoid climbing into hollow trees, especially if they look like they're already occupied. Good night.